What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the 8th album by rock band Nickelback. Basically, this product is called No Fixed Address, and it came out in the fall of 2014. So the thing about this particular product is just the fact that Nickelback had had a string of hit albums. They were pretty dominant throughout the 2000s entirely as far as those pitches can happen. They also had some good stuff in the early 2010s. I don't remember as much full bound about like the more early 2010s Nickelback, but I definitely remember a lot of these. You know, there's some obvious hit albums from them, like their 2003 album and then their 2001 album, Silver Side Up. All the Right Reasons from 2005 was a huge deal. Dark Horse was a pretty big deal back in 2008. So just a lot of big ones. They typically would get past like the fourth or fifth single, especially on their later in the 2000s albums. They were huge in like the early 2000s. Pretty much weren't hardly any days that you wouldn't hear How You Remind Me or one of those type hits from 2001 or 2003. It's always had those kind of early 2000s kind of post grunge dredges on here. This is damn near, this particular album, No Fixed Address, is pretty much damn near a classic here. It has a real excellent type fare, but it's really not that much post grunge. I mean, it's not really hard rock. It's Wikipedia says it's kind of post grunge, hard rock, pop rock, and dance rock. I do see a little bit of the dance rock on here, but I think the main amalgamation behind it is just overall like a good vanilla rock record, which I would have to say that they continue to be at the forefront of rock music for at least the most part. I can't think like when you think of like probably the faces of rock music around this particular time, it's not as full bound that I can think of some of these that are not from like, you know, obviously I think AC/DC dropped an album, but in terms of something that was a little bit more just not quite over the hill just yet. I kind of look after these folks, Chad Kroeger and the rest of the band are probably one of the ones that were a relative face of this particular era because, you know, Korn was always alternative. Metallica doesn't drop oftenly enough. Like Limp Bizkit wasn't around. Linkin Park in 2014 would kind of get the occasional hit, but they didn't quite have as much full bound kind of dexterity in like the 2010s as much as they did in like the early 2000s and such. So it's just kind of the concept. I look after this particular album gets to like the sixth or even seventh single. If you count the singles that were released in Italy and Europe and some of those type places, they got to either 7 or 8 singles out of 11 songs in this particular product. So it was a pretty big deal. It lasted between about the summer of 2014 to about the summer of 2015, just within the fair behind it. But I look after it. Yeah, once again, this is not, if you do miss, like I can see some folks saying just because, you know, just for folks that remember like the Silver Side Up days and their 2003 album, I forget what that one's called, but their early 2000s days of just those stretchers, even Nickelback's album from 1998, some of those type fairs, just being able to say those particular type hits that maybe it just doesn't have that. But I will say this is not as much of like a dredgy kind of sad album. I notice minus like a couple songs like maybe Miss You, but even that particular song had some pep. This is really not down in the dumps this time. It's just not the typical kind of wailing that Chad Kroeger kind of does when he's just malaised and pissed off, kind of smoking a cigarette in the car, just kind of ruminating as he goes to work or pitches like that just within that fair. It's not that kind of album this time. This has a lot more pep and spiffiness about it that just has within the tone. Definitely has some of that mid 2000 or definitely has some of that mid 2010s kind of dance appeal. There are some dance songs. Flow Ride is on here. Surprisingly, wasn't expecting that one. I mean, it's not quite a full blown EDM type embrace, but I look within the appeal behind it. It does have some of that relative appeal. Kind of traces of Pitbull, David Guetta, a little bit of Flow Ride, some of those type pitches, at least in a couple songs. Maybe not more than 3 or 4, but definitely within the pitch, at least 2 or 3 of those have that particular type of appeal. So it's just within the pitch, but it's really, like I've been saying, it's not post grunge whatsoever for the most part. I mean, there is some songs that may take it back just within the chorus or like the overall melodies on the song that have like a minor amount of like early 2000s Nickelback, but this is basically just, in my opinion, like a vanilla kind of 2010s hard rock type album from someone that just, you know, happens to be a face of rock in a lot of ways, despite the fact that despite the fact that they do in certain senses kind of have like their tomatoes thrown at them and just kind of the overall backlash that they get. I feel like they do have the appeal and they do have a substantive kind of following just within the pitch behind it. It's just kind of the concept that, you know, they get as many thumbs up as they do thumbs down just within the pitch. So it's just kind of here and there. But I look after this is an excellent album. Like I said, it's going to get basically a virtual classic, I'd have to say. So I look after, yeah, like I was saying, there's 6 singles. There are actually more than 6 singles, but I'm just going to talk about the ones that were like officially released as 6, at least in the United States. Now, the thing about it is out of these singles, there were like a couple of these that hit #1 on the U.S. main charts and on the Billboard as far as those pitches can happen for like the U.S. main rock. I want to say Edge of the Revolution was at least one of those, possibly Million Miles an Hour is another one, and and then maybe like Get 'Em Up was one. There were only like 3 out of the 6 singles that really charted in America here. But the surprising thing about it is just the song. Surprising thing about it is just the fact that the song "She Keeps Me Up" got over 120 million plays on Spotify. So it's an interesting type pitch. All of these were in the millions, but it's just kind of constant. That's the most popular song, despite the fact it didn't chart on the rock charts. It's kind of the appeal. But Edge of a Revolution, I recommend all of the singles in some fashion, but I will say that What Are You Waiting For is kind of an almost song. We'll get to that. But Edge of a Revolution is a nice one here. There's like a summary kind of back on the scene, kind of turn up to kind of get just a mid arena kind of rock. I would definitely feel like here, just some outdoor kind of go ham. I'd feel like definitely it's a good song to have. Just good song to have some go ham kind of fun to kind of get within that. So it's just a good type pitch. Definitely reminds me of Puddle. Definitely reminds me of Puddle of Mud from like the Control days. If you remember that song Control from back in the summer of 2001, some pitches like that. It's just that same sort of fare. It's kind of a brewing, kind of more bass guitar heavy type one as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. This summer, just gnarledness as far as those pitches kind of happen. I would also say Stain with one of their ones. I forget what particular song it was, but it was off of like their 1999 album. I forget, maybe Mud Shovel, something like that. One of those type of songs. Control and Mud Shovel, some of those type of songs reminds me of just a real bass guitar heavy type one. Just in the pitch, summer brewer within that fare. Real nice aspect, kind of get some of these. Just that summer heat, just kind of the aspect. Just it's a good type song to have for some of that. Just to break away from the monotony, just cruise around, have some good time, smoke some swishers, some good fare like that. Just have a good, kick back of just getting some KFC, some barbecue, some of that type fare, getting some good like biscuits and beers as far as those pitch kind of having just excellent type fare. What Are You Waiting For is the second single. Now this is one that this is the only almost song on this particular album for me, and this is the reason why this album's not going to get like a 9.5 out of 10. It's going to get a solid 9 out of 10, but I just look after just being able to say as far as those pitch going to happen with it that pretty much the concept is there's still at least 2 songs off this album I don't recommend, but it is a virtual classic here. But this is the only almost song out of it. So basically 8.5 out of 11 is what I recommend. But this song basically is like an SFW kind of pop rock, kind of soft cruise around dredge, I'd say about this particular one. Just some basic makeshift pepped and prompt to kind of have here. Just kind of within the pitch behind it. It's just kind of a concept of just being a little bit more work friendly type one, just kind of the concept of just standard fare, just going straight to work, some of those type pitches, just being a relative drifting type mood. There's kind of some encouragement as far as that particular fare kind of happens just a little bit. It's not preachy, but it's just kind of within the concept. It's just a different prompt from the usual type fare that Nickelback would have done back in the 2000s. I think this is the kind of aspect where folks might have said they changed because it's just a little bit more uplifting within the tone. I do like this one. This is not like a lame kind of uplifting song. It's a good concept to be able to say. It's just kind of one that says, hey, get the courage, step to it, face your demons, some of those type pitches, just kind of having like a little bit of balminess. Now it is a little bit gummy within the sense. It is a little bit gummy within the sense as far as those pitches kind of happen. I realize that there probably could have been a little bit more edge towards it as far as just having a little bit more gnarledness. But in terms of like an SFW, just going to Target, going to Home Depot, some of those type pitches, going to Staples, some of those type standard fares, that just going to standard work, some of that typeness, going to Walmart jobs, some of those type pitches. Whatever job you particularly have is just within the pitch as far as saying that it's trying to shift you in the right direction as far as those pitch can have. But I just look after just within the tone. It's just kind of the concept that is just a little bit more softcore rock compared to like some of the concepts on here. But this is probably like the most SFW one. This is probably like the most SFW of the songs on this particular album. So it's just a straightforward type one, more like the definitely more blue collar-esque, but it works pretty damn well. But it's just an almost song because I just question. I do like this song with the encouragement, but if you're not really needing like a pick me up or something like that, it just doesn't have as much fittingness. I mean, it has the degree of putting you in a good mood, but like I said, it's just kind of more hammy just within it's just kind of more gummy within a sense that if you're not within that particular mode of needing some of that, it just doesn't work as much within that tone. But it is a good song, so it's an almost song for the most part. That's why this album gets a 9 out of 10 because I do recommend it more than I don't. But Million Miles an Hour is the third single. This is another one that's very similar to Edge of a Revolution and Get 'Em Up, some of those type ones. This is like a great gnarled Nickelback, I'd have to say. Like I was saying, it goes with Edge of a Revolution. Definitely, it's like some stock. It's definitely like a stock summer boiler. I'd say it's pretty overall hot song kind of get. So I do like these summer heat type ones. Nickelback back on their edge. It's just kind of a concept. I don't know how many of these full bound they did in like their early 2000s days, considering it's been quite some time since I reviewed some of those, like the 2010s. But I look after it just being able to say, I do think that particular fair just having some of these edgier type ones, but this particular album covers most of Nickelback's strengths, but I do miss the sort of song that they had back in like 2001, 2003. I do think they probably, maybe they just didn't want to be typecast and just be seen as like a one-trick pony, but in terms like what basically like what I was saying in terms of having another song like How You Remind Me, it just doesn't have that particular fair as far as that aspect kind of happens with it. None of that kind of gusty, kind of just post grunge, kind of overcast type day type era, just like going to work in like a cloudy kind of September, October, some of that dredge, just that post up with just smoking like a swisher in the car, something like that, smoking like a blunt in the car, something like that. Just kind of the tone of just that standard dredge and just wailing as far as this pitch can happen. But this is, these summer heaters are pretty nice. I feel like they get things riled up. It's just some 2010s kind of hang out just within that fair. It's a little bit more social project, just to be able to say that. So those are some nice ones. Those are some nice ones. But probably the best song on this album, just in general, I agree with like the Spotify crowd as far as those pitches kind of happen, would be the fourth single, She Keeps Me Up. Like I was saying, this has over 120 million plays on Spotify compared to most of the songs on this album having, like, there are some ones that have like 30 and 60 million plays, but this is far and away the most popular song. But She Keeps Me Up is like a nice dance floor groove to kind of get here. Just a two-step gem, I feel like. Some night commerce, definitely, and it's refreshing for like the band. I would have to say within that field. They really haven't done songs like this in the past. I want to say pretty much they weren't doing dance type song. They weren't really doing dance bop type songs back in the 2000s, seemingly as far as those pitches going to happen. But this song hops pretty well just within that tone. Reminds me of like some of those songs that were popular 2014, 2015, kind of an in between of like EDM and a little bit of just like a song like that song that Bruno Mars did, Uptown Funk, some of those type pitches. Just a real good foot tapper to some of that just night commerce and just stepping out. It's a good, nice one to kind of have for like getting a little bit of jive and groove as far as those pitches kind of happen for just nightclub type appeal. So it's just different. Normally, Nickelback is more car centric, just more kind of malaise and just kind of commerce out and about, some of those type fairs with like some summer heaters in there. It was like a good aspect of like some new and refreshing type angles from Nickelback that works pretty well. There probably should have been another song like this. This works extremely well. Didn't chart on the charts, but still is the one, basically the anchor of this particular album. It's like the most killer song on here, I'd have to damn near say. Satellite is a quality one. Now this is the fifth single. This is kind of one that takes it back a little bit to like Nickelback from like the 2000s. It's like a vintage kind of malaise Nickelback, I'd have to say, but it's not quite post grunge. I'd say it's just a little bit more. The song is not quite post grunge, I'd have to say. It's just a little bit more acoustic dredge, I'd feel like here, but it is another nice one to have for some of that ponder. So if you do absolutely miss that Nickelback from like the 2000s type fair, you're just like, where's old Chad that I knew back in 2001, 2005, some of that type fare is just within the concept of getting some of that standard fare. But yeah, it's just more of an acoustic type bop. Just kind of, I mean, I feel like this is kind of like a summary type one, just within the sense behind it. Standard type fare, just going to work type fare. Tuesday type ponders as far as those pitches kind of happen, but it just doesn't have like the standard anguish. Like basically the concept about this particular album is just the fact that Chad Kroeger and the band cheered up on this particular product, so they just weren't as much in like a droll type mood this time, which I want to say, despite the fact that it's a dope concept, that there's some pep and just overall thrills about this project, it is somewhat of a minor disappointment, just the fact that they don't have like that standard kind of this dredge of just like the aspect of just kind of being in like a foul mood, because it worked for them. It's definitely, there's just certain folks that have the ability to make those songs work. That's what Silver Side Up was, and that's what I think it was called, like 2003 albums called like The Long Road, something like that. Some of those type albums, even All the Right Reasons from 2005 nailed those songs particularly well, I'd have to say. It was just within the pitch. But Satellite and maybe like Miss You are like the closest things to doing that, but those are not, compared to the early 2000s, just don't have it within that same dredge, but it works. Get 'Em Up is the sixth single. This is another summer boiler here. It's like a stock kind of get turnt noise to kind of have just some basic kind of mid 2010s hangout fare to kind of have. Good one with your pals, some of those type pitches, smoke a joint, smoke a zigzag, some of that type fare, just good in like the simmering heat, I'd have to say. Good typeness just be able to get here, some of those type ones. I feel like there's at least three of these, like I was saying. Obviously, Million Miles an Hour, Edge of a Revolution, some of those type fares, Get 'Em Up, some of these type pitches. Just appreciating like some backyard summer fun pitches like that, beer, biscuits, barbecue, some of that type fare, just some good type stuff. This would really look after it. It's good type noise kind of have for some of that. Just kind of within the aspect, just having some great times as far as this pitch kind of happen, just in the aspect of like some kickback, good type fare. So yeah, this is kind of somewhat of a summer album. Despite the fact that this came out in the fall, it's an interesting type fare to kind of get some of this summer heat on here. It just works for that sort of appeal. But yeah, those are the singles off this project. So yeah, like I was saying, out of 11 songs on here, I wound up recommending 8.5. So the only two songs I don't recommend, apart from just like the Almost song being What Are You Waiting For, the only two songs I don't recommend in any fashion would just be The Hammers Coming Down and Sister Sin. And both of these, basically the hammers coming down was just like a power ballad like a sense. It's just kind of like a power rock type tune to kind of have for like a car stretcher as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's something that's this is probably the most dramatic song on the album as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's kind of one where, you know, shit is real, things are getting ready to pop off as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just kind of the fair, just wondering about some of that, just drama type fair to kind of get. But I don't know, just the appeal behind it was just kind of one that I just, it didn't have as much connect as far as those particular tones going to happen. I mean, I do feel like it just is a throwback to vintage kind of Nickelback. They're kind of similar to Three Doors Down, some of those type folks that just have some of that type pep, but just cruise arounds and pitches like that. But that one just didn't have as much appeal. It's just kind of one. I mean, if you need like some long traverse or just some pitches to really think about things on the road, some of that type fair was just within the pitch. Didn't see the appeal behind that one. And Sister Sin just kind of had a twang about it. This is like a more country rock type one, but just didn't pull off the appeal as far as like the band work and the instrumentation value of that particular one. It's probably the most offhanded one off this particular product. Most of this album had like a pretty similar type theme, but this is one that just didn't really have as much melding as far as the rest of the project, just in terms like the band work as to what went along with it. It was just kind of one Outback type one that just didn't nail it in terms of what it needed to there. But yeah, I give this album a solid 9 out of 10. I feel like, you know, 8.5 out of 11 is basically the pitch behind it. I mean, I just look within the fare. If I had recommended 10 out of 11, this would have gotten a 10 out of 10. So it's just within the pitch, just a little, just missed it. I feel like 6 singles in combination with the concept. There's some extra good songs in here on top of that, and the fact that this is a pretty boisterous type time, very social in this aspects. But yeah, I'll go ahead and recommend some of these other songs on here. So Make Me Believe Again is a quality one. It's like a basic kind of night commerce stroll or drive, I'd have to say about this particular one. Just enjoy the night wind and just some goodies, travel type fair stuff like that, I'd have to say. So it's just kind of the concept, just being out and about, whether you're just going to the gas station, picking up some snack cakes, some Chex Mix, some burritos, some of that type fare, or going for like a relative drive to kind of get some things accomplished, get some night bills paid, some of that type fare, head up a Chica, some pitches like that, some of that standard type fare to be able to say, just kind of within the concept of this kind of out and about, and just like the overall this aspect of the after hours fair as far as that kind of happens. So good type pitch, not really as full bound. I want to say that some of these songs kind of popped up on Dark Horse, and maybe all the right reasons. Some of those type fairs was just an aspect of just having like some good, like this is the better version. I feel like Make Me Believe Again nails it better than the Hammers Coming Down. Hammers Coming Down is just strictly kind of traverse as far as those pitches kind of happen, just more stretch, just more lengthy kind of traverse. But Make Me Believe Again is just like a roundabout type one, whether you're just making local track kind of runs or actually going around for a drive as far as those pitch kind of happens, just within the fair behind it. But that is a nice one. Miss You is a quality one. Now this is another wailing type one. This is like a vintage kind of wailing Nickelback from like the 2000s days that I would say is just more peppy, but it does have longing about it, I have to say here. Just a cheery spin on like their old days. So this is the concept of this, the changes that Nickelback kind of went through around this time. Not quite as much malaise and just the concept of just that standard kind of just typical kind of 4 o'clock p.m. type dredge who just got off with work and kind of being in a foul mood. This is like the concept. This would be about the mantra of this particular album. It's just showing like the 180 that they kind of made around this time. Now I question if like, I don't remember the Nickelback 2017 album. I think that one kind of had some malaise on there because I think folks missed that. I just question about their 2022 album, but just within the pitch, this was kind of a 180, just kind of saying that Chad is like, you know, just not quite as in much of like a foul type aspect. And it's kind of similarly happened to Three Doors Down. They're another type band that just had the aspect of being able to nail some of those dredge type ones. Both Three Doors Down with songs like Kryptonite and Losers, some of those type pitches, and Nickelback with How You Remind Me in some of their early days. Just kind of had that particular flavor of doing it. But this is like an aspect. This is like the closest thing I'd say. Basically, Satellite and Miss You are like the closest thing to old school kind of Nickelback, was just within the tone, just paying attention that it's just not as malaise. It just doesn't have that vintage. It's throwback, but it kind of isn't in the same sense. But it is a nice song. Then Got Me Running Around is another quality one as well. Now this is the song that has Flow Right on here. He really fits the song pretty well. This is an excellent type one here. Real surprise hit of ones, like a nestled kind of routine summer day. I'd have to say about this one, just some good times, but in like normal energy, I'd feel like about this particular one, just some typical kind of comedy to kind of get here. This really routine type day, just Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, some of that type fare. Kind of like an SFW type song, pretty similar to What Are You Waiting For, just without the pep and the overall cheeriness of that particular one. Just standard type makeshift kind of day within those pitches, like the concept of Flow Rider being on the song, just fitting the song pretty well. Just a pretty affable type aspect, kind of get this one. It isn't so plain. This is the concept, not plain in terms of quality, but it's just a plain type song. This is just a routine type one. It's probably the most vanilla song on this album in terms of the impact that it had just off that particular vibe about it. It's real, just overall, just real nice, effectual type appeal as far as those pitches kind of have with it. But it's just, that's kind of the concept. It just doesn't, the riffage is kept simple and just kind of relatively vanilla as far as those pitch can happen. So that's just the tone. But yeah, this album gets a 9 out of 10. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll give the social score like a 9.25 out of 10 because I feel like there were 6 singles off here, a lot of good appeals, some SFW songs like What Are You Waiting For and Got Me Running Round, some summer turn up songs, at least 3 of those, some Traverse songs like Make Me Believe Again and the Hammers Coming Down, some of those type pitches, just a lot of good promotion, some dance songs on here, some of that type there. I do think this album needed another song like She Keeps Me Up. It's just within the pitch, but I do feel like the strengths, like Nickelback definitely does it, but this makes me question like the overall hate that Nickelback kind of particularly gets, just whether or not folks are going to feel like this album is trash just based upon the concept of it. I mean, it's just kind of here and there with that. I realize they get into the 6th single, they do hit #1 as often as they do. It's just as typical fare for them, but it's just within the aspect of just questioning. This is kind of scattershot. Some folks like this song, some people like that song, some people hate this one, some people love that one. It's just within the pitch. It's just the typical kind of polarizing typeness that you kind of get here. It's with the impact behind it. But another complaint, just to be able to say, is just the fact that I like these moments on here, these summer kind of boilers of hangout. But I do think this new energy that some of these strengths that they were trying out, I think probably needed another one to be able to do that. So it's just from the pitch. I definitely, the thing about it is they needed another song like She Keeps Me Up. Probably like another song like their old post grunge days that just would have taken it back to how you remind me. That probably would have been the icing on the cake as far as those pitches can have it. But 9.25. In terms of future, like Nickelback has not been around since 2022. I still have like 3 more albums by them to get to. I've got their 90s albums, which I do want to get to the one from 98 pretty soon. I'm going to get to that one relatively soon enough. Then their 96 and 2022 albums, and that would take care of it. But then there's probably not really as full blown sure what Nickelback has been up to in the future. I think they'll probably have some more albums on the way, which is some excellent type fair to kind of get that. We'll have to see what happens with that. But that, yeah, this is like a virtual classic here, very impactful, very brief, but it nails it. And like the pitch that it does, doesn't have very many complaints about this project. Just some excellent type fair that continues their legacy and does it well.